the relationship between the community and the police department, I believe, is an important one. We have wonderful people in this Kansas City community, but we also have wonderful people who work for the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. And when that relationship deteriorates or is not serviced such that is a positive one, it can be dangerous for everybody. So that's why we take this work very seriously. It's frustrating at times. It's wonderful at times. I get to work with good people like you. So it's truly been a blessing, but these are some very trying times, and we know that we have some rough days ahead as we try to work through all of this. And so we just pray that everybody will be engaged, that we'll be patient, but yet still be diligent. Continue to apply pressure where pressure needs to be applied, because there's definitely room for growth and room for improvement in all of these systems, and particularly as it relates to criminal justice. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for coming on and wanting to share with us today. There is, as you know, a lot of us, a lot of us are in pain around what's happening in our nation, and people are, causing and challenging themselves and being in places where, they typically may not go and protest and speak out, but because of everything that's going on, they're applying a lens of what's happening here in Kansas City. And what are we doing in Kansas City? And whose names are we saying in Kansas City? Ryan Stokes, Cameron Liam, and individuals are calling out for change. They want to see improvement. And so some of the questions, one is, how do individuals even access the complaint process to begin to voice when they've had experiences with officers where they don't believe that they were treated right?
Right. It's actually very simple, actually. Complaints can be filed at any one of the division stations. They can be filed also at the ad hoc offices. Also, if you're north of the river, they can be filed at Northland Neighborhoods Incorporated. Also, you can just simply call our office and we will either email you a copy of complaint form that can be sent back to us, or we'll place one into mail to you in the mail to you if you're not accessible to the internet services or anything like that. I think one of the if there's a silver lining to the whole COVID-19 situation that we find ourselves in, before COVID, there was a prohibition against us taking telephone complaints because we had to be able to verify that the individuals that were making the complaint were actually the individual that came into contact with the officer. But the Board of Police Commissioners saw fit to relax that requirement. So you can now even file complaints over the telephone. So it's whatever way you need for us to reach you and to get in contact with you so that your complaint can be filed, we will do it. We'll make every effort to get into contact with you so that we can log and document your contact with the police department.
One of the other things that came up was about protocol. What are the protocols that the police have in place to ensure that if individuals are getting substantiated complaint after substantiated complaint after substantiated complaint? Deputy Chief Oakman talked about the difference between unsubstantiated and substantiated. So let's just, talk about when there is evidence and material there that something wrong has happened. How does OCC, and also the police department, how are we addressing those in a way that ensures that we don't have officers out there that are repeatedly harming the community?
Right. So whenever there's a substantiated complaint, meaning that a member has been found to violate policies or procedures, that entire situation, the entire investigative file is reviewed by that officer's entire chain of command, meaning their immediate supervisor all the way up to the chief of police. that chain throughout the chain of command, each individual from, let's say, for instance, using an example, say if it was a police officer who's on patrol in one of the division stations, that means that that matter will be reviewed by their sergeant, their captain, their major, then forwarded on to the patrol bureau, which Deputy Chief Oakman is the commander of. And even throughout the patrol bureau, the executive officer and Deputy Chief Oakman, before it even goes to the office of the Chief of Police. So you're talking about a number of individuals, all who will give comment on the results of the investigation and what they believe should be the disciplinary action taken against the officer. And then finally, the final action always rests with the office of the Chief of Police, but he does listen and takes into advisement the recommendation that comes from the other members of the chain of command who review that investigative file. The Office of Community Complaints, it must be understood that we are not within the chain of command of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. We are direct employees of the Board of Police Commissioners. So we are not involved necessarily in that process. Our function is to make recommendations as not whether or not we believe that there's been a violation of policy and procedure. But we are notified as to whether or not disciplinary action has been given, but the specific type of disciplinary action, that's still a personnel function. So therefore, the specifics of disciplinary action aren't shared with this office or outside of, again, the chain of command, or I guess, or the human resource aspect of the department. It should be noted also, however, that even with your not sustained complaints, even if there's not what we would consider to be disciplinary action taken, there is always some type of review of every situation done. Case in point. So we may have a situation where it does not rise to the level of a specific policy violation. However, maybe there's additional training that needs to be done across the board, right? Maybe there's maybe the policy is bad. Maybe we need to review the policy and make some adjustments there. So in that sense, there is always some type of action taken, and all of the reports are actually forwarded to the Board of Police Commissioners, so they see all of the complaints. The chain of command sees all of the complaints and the outcome of them. So there is a review, and we're able to go back and look at those actions to make sure that there's some consistency and that we are actually reviewing those types of matters. Also, we have what we would consider be an early warning system with the department. If we see like a department member who's getting a number of complaints in a short amount of time, or even a specific amount of time, it doesn't necessarily have to be short. We will recommend that the chain of command actually have a conversation with that member to make sure that everything is going okay with them. Maybe there needs to be some additional training. Maybe there's some personal problems, some personal issues that need to be addressed. I mean, it's a lot that goes on. But in terms of disciplinary action, of course, yes, the chain of command, they are charged with handling all of those situations. And disciplinary action can range from an instructional interview where they bring the member in and discuss the matter with them. They can get an instructional letter that can be placed in their jacket, their employee file, that will remain there for a specific amount of time, all the way up to termination. So the level of disciplinary action really depends on the severity of the offense, I do believe.
And most people, they understand that personnel files, and that
Right.
you can't say, okay, Merrell Bennekin did this on this day, and this is what we did to Merrell Bennekin,
Right.
because of those HR protections.
Yeah.
The question comes into play around transparency, though. And so how are we aggregating that data? What responsibility does the police commission board, your office, begin to look at patterns and systems? You talked about policies,
Right.
and be able to share that aggregated data,
Right.
with some disaggregation, right? Because I mean,
Right.
you can say, hey, we had this many complaints,
Right.
and many were substantiated, okay, we're done. But just really looking at, where the problems lie, and how do you connect with the community when you find that, hey, we're recommending that this policy be changed because of these specific things. Where does the community, where do we find that? How do we engage in that process? And then again, how are we, maybe having like a dashboard or some tracking system that says overall from the department level, this is what we're doing to ensure that we have officers that are truly there to protect and serve.
Right. And yeah, I mean, those are conversations that we've been having, I guess, since over the past couple of months. How do we improve that level of communication? Of course, we produce reports, monthly reports that are given to the Board of Police Commissioners that are available to the public upon request, is that the other. We're trying to definitely increase our online presence to make those documents readily available. Of course, we have the annual reports that are produced, and upon request, certain amounts of information can be disseminated. I think our challenge has been what information is germane to the public, and how is the best way to get it out there. So we realize that has been one of the shortfalls in terms of our communication, to make sure that we have that ready stream of information that is just easily accessible to the public. So trust and believe. You asked me when we first got on whether or not I gotten any rest. No, because looking at best practices, looking at other agencies around the country that do the work that we do, and trying to figure out the best way to make that information available. And trust and believe, we will get this figured out shortly, the best way to get this done. And we're any recommendations that that the council or anybody in the public has is invaluable to us. Now, as far as our accessibility, as you well know, I am ready to appear and speak and engage anybody, anywhere, to talk about the complaint process and answer those questions. You just simply call my office. My number is 816-889-6641. That is my direct line. And if you need me to come out, I know we're meeting virtually in most aspects now. I am always available to answer those questions. And trust me, my feelings aren't paper thin. You can say what you want to say, and I will take it all in and process it, because I believe all this conversation, especially right now, is very productive. Is helping us, is, like I said, is providing a window into what we do and how we can do it better. So I'm not going to sit here and say that everything that we've done or that we're doing right now is perfect. I do believe that there's always room for improvement, always room for growth, and I'm putting ourselves on a timetable to get a lot of these things accomplished. As a matter of fact, I was just meeting this morning to see what we can do to strengthen our IT exposure in terms of getting these documents and things, this information available. And that, actually, it's funny that you asked that question, because one of the things on the punch list was what statistical data would be available just doing a simple search on our soon to be launched website. So, it's that part of it that we need to work on, and we've been having those conversations. They're long overdue, and it's time for us to just put those words to action, I do believe.
Are you empowered to put together a community advisory board to help inform you on how we can address some of these things? Because there were, people on the call yesterday on this virtual town hall. Many people are ready. They want to help. They want to support. They want to offer their ideas and thoughts, and perhaps you could pull some folks together and say, okay, there's certain things that we can share, there's certain things we can't share, but what are some ideas that we can interact better with the public?
Sure. And actually, in fact, we had an advisor group for a number of years. It's just that I guess lack of interest. It just fell by the wayside. But I think now it's good. I'm glad to hear that people are once again interested in doing this work, because it got frustrating for a time where we would schedule public meetings to come in to the OCC. We do presentations, and the first one was well attended. Then it started to wax and wane. It's that the other. Then finally people just stopped showing up. But I think that now that we have this in front of us, is a perfect opportunity for us to strike while the iron is hot, and probably to restart those types of meetings and those engagements. And yes, trust me, I've had the calls. I have a long list of individuals